On the outskirts of California, nestled in the shadows of the Redwood forest, stood an abandoned mansion known to locals as Witch's Eye. Within its decaying walls, four friends, Jason, Lisa, Mark, and Amy, concocted a perilous scheme. They believed, by joining forces with a mysterious occultist, Malcolm, they could amass a fortune with ease. Malcolm, rumored to possess knowledge of dark magic and communication with the spirit realm, agreed to their proposition, but with a chilling condition. He demanded they procure the corpse of a pregnant woman. Jason, Lisa, Mark, and Amy, driven by their avarice, accepted this macabre stipulation. They knew it was a dangerous and immoral act, but the lure of wealth clouded their judgment. They began their search, scouring city hospitals and morgues, yet nowhere could they find the required cadaver. Finally, they discovered a recently interred grave in a secluded cemetery, the resting place of a pregnant woman. Under the cover of darkness, they exhumed the body and transported it to Malcolm. Malcolm, upon receiving the corpse, commenced a ritual, placing it within a chalked circle and chanting in an archaic tongue. Jason, Lisa, Mark, and Amy, trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation, followed Malcolm's instructions. Little did they know, they were walking into a terrifying trap. Malcolm's intentions were far from benevolent. He planned to sacrifice them. Malcolm, his eyes gleaming with an unholy light, instructed the four friends to each hold a length of black thread, each tied to a different part of the deceased woman's body. One thread was bound to her head, two to her hands, and two to her feet. He then ordered them to retreat into the dense undergrowth, warning them against any communication or movement until he gave the signal. The night was thick, the silence broken only by the rustling of leaves in the distance, hooting of owls. An hour stretched into 2, then 3. The tension was palpable, the air heavy with an unseen dread. Jason, Lisa, Mark, and Amy, isolated in the darkness, began to succumb to their fears. The waiting was unbearable, the silence deafening. As the first hints of dawn painted the horizon, a sense of urgency gripped Jason. He could see figures moving in the distance, approaching the cemetery. Panic surged through him. He couldn't risk being caught, not now. Ignoring Malcolm's warnings, Jason emerged from his hiding place, his thread still clutched in his trembling hand. He found Mark, huddled behind a gnarled oak, his face pale and drawn. A heated argument ensued, the silence of the night shattered by their whispered accusations. Lisa and Amy, drawn by the commotion, joined them. The fear of discovery outweighed their obedience to Malcolm. They decided to abandon the ritual, to escape before it was too late. But when they returned to the clearing, Malcolm was gone. The woman's body remained, but the chalk circle was disturbed, the threads trailing in the dirt. A chilling realization dawned upon them. Malcolm had deceived them. He had never intended to share any wealth, but to use them as sacrificial pawns in his dark ritual. They were trapped, caught in a web of their own making, and the night was far from over. A cold dread settled over the group. The realization that they had been pawns in a dark ritual meant for sacrifice was a heavy weight. They were now alone, entangled in a situation far more sinister than they had anticipated. The air around the clearing felt thick, charged with an unseen energy, a palpable sense of malevolence. They searched the immediate area, their whispers echoing in the pre-dawn stillness, but Malcolm was nowhere to be found. Panic began to set in, each rustle of leaves, each snap of a twig, sounding like the approach of something unseen. They decided to leave the clearing, to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the site of the ritual. They moved through the dense forest, their fear guiding their steps, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they emerged from the woods, they found themselves near the edge of a small town, the first signs of life stirring. They noticed a group of people gathered, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Approaching cautiously, they overheard snippets of conversation, whispers of something terrible happening by the river. They learned that a body had been discovered, mutilated and dismembered, the scene described in horrific detail. The description sent a chill down their spines. It matched the condition of the woman's body they had left behind, but with one crucial difference. Malcolm's body was also present, torn apart in a grotesque display. The local people spoke, of dark forces, of ancient evils awakened, their voices hushed with fear. The authorities were baffled, unable to explain the brutal scene. The group understood then they had stumbled into something far beyond their comprehension, a force that had turned on Malcolm and could easily turn on them. The game had changed, and they were no longer the players, but the pieces. The gruesome discovery by the river sent a wave of terror through Jason, Lisa, Mark, and Amy. They understood with chilling clarity that the force which had decimated Malcolm was not bound by human limitations. It was something ancient, something malevolent, and now it was aware of them. The illusion of control they once held was shattered, replaced by a raw, primal fear. They were no longer the hunters, but the hunted. They retreated from the town, their movements cautious, their eyes constantly scanning the shadows. They sought refuge in an abandoned cabin deep within the Redwood forest, a place they hoped would offer temporary sanctuary. The cabin, weathered and decaying, held an eerie silence, a stark contrast to the cacophony of their racing thoughts. They barricaded the doors and windows, their actions driven by a desperate need for security. As night fell, the forest around them seemed to come alive. The wind carried whispers through the trees, sounds that seemed to morph into voices, taunting and menacing. The shadows danced and shifted, taking on grotesque shapes, fueling their paranoia. They huddled together, their fear a tangible presence in the confined space. They began to question their actions, the choices that had led them to this terrifying predicament. The lure of easy wealth had blinded them to the inherent danger, the dark forces they had unwittingly unleashed. They realized the folly of their ambition, the catastrophic consequences of their greed. They were trapped not only by the physical confines of the cabin, but by the weight of their own culpability. The night stretched on, each passing moment filled with a growing sense of dread. They knew, with a chilling certainty, that they were not alone. Something was out there, watching them, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The forest, once a place of beauty, had become a prison, a realm of unseen horrors, and they were its unwilling inhabitants.